Will Gonzaga's last ride in the WCC result in Mark Few's 23rd conference title?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Happy Friday and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your co-hosts. I'm Andy Patton. He is Isaac Schade. And you are joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. I want to give a special shout out to those everyday listeners, those of you who are hanging out with us in the Locked On College Basketball Discord community, and thank all of you who have made this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like all college basketball players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. So stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Well, Isaac, it is the 8th and the second to last conference preview that we are doing here on these Fridays before the college basketball season. This will be our last one of the mid-major non-power conferences. We are talking West Coast Conference today. You can find a playlist on YouTube linked above that's going to show you all of these conference previews that we have done. And we are really excited to talk about the WCC. I am actually in Las Vegas right now. For those of you watching on YouTube,
let's go.
Why the background looks a little bit different. I actually just got done interviewing every coach and all of the players who attended the West Coast Conference Media Day. So very topical that we were able to time it out to have this show happen this day. Isaac, really excited to talk about the WCC. Really, really fun league. Lots of good storylines, chief among them being the fact that this was Gonzaga's final West Coast Conference Media Day as they are entering their final season as members of the WCC.
Oh, Andy, it's wild. I love, as you said, so it's almost like we were intentional with how we planned this out. Bum, bum, bum. Super fun. Yes, I think it was hitting both of us literally as we were about to hit record. Like, we probably won't do a WCC preview next year because this conference is going to not have the same level of it's just weird to start thinking about that reality in real time right now. But man, just, we talk so often about Kansas's run of dominance through the Big 12 up until the last couple of years. And even that pales in comparison to what Gonzaga has done over the last 2+ decades with Mark Few and just a couple years ahead of him as well. And so, nothing short of incredible. And I love that this conversation is kicking off this wild exhibition weekend. Andy, let me just plug 5 quick games really quick. Tonight, Friday, Kansas at Louisville, Purdue at Kentucky, UNC BYU from the Delta Center in Salt Lake. Tomorrow, Michigan at St. John's, and Sunday, Duke at Tennessee. Andy, it's incredible. An insane weekend. We're going to talk about all of those games on Monday's show. But Andy, as for today, yes, we are talking the WCC and Gonzaga's stranglehold on it. Look, we're going to get to all our conference predictions and all that later, but just you asked the question, so I'm going to ask it back to you. In your mind, here's how I'm going to ask it to you right now so that we don't ruin predictions. If there was a non-Gonzaga team to win either the regular season or conference tournament title, who is it?
Yeah, I think it's got to be St. Mary's. St. Mary's, obviously, like Gonzaga, they both have had a sustained amount of success, have both been pretty consistently in the NCAA tournament. In fact, St. Mary's has actually won the last 2 WCC regular seasons. Last year, Gonzaga beat them in the WCC tournament. The year prior, St. Mary's also won the conference tournament. It was one of the very few years of the last 15+ years that Gonzaga hasn't won either. In fact, out of the last 13 years, Gonzaga has won. In 12 of those 13 years, they've won at least the regular season or the conference tournament. 2 years ago was the first time they did not win at least one of those 2 things. So St. Mary's feels like the team. They also lost 4 starters, similar to Gonzaga, both teams losing 4 starters, but keeping a ton of key reserves. I would also toss out San Francisco, and we'll talk about them a bit more later. They're a very, very good team, dangerous roster, really well-coached team. But yeah, there is a reason that people have been putting Gonzaga's name at the top of this conference pretty much in Sharpie for a long long time. And even with the uncertainty around Tyon Grant Foster and new look backcourt for this team, it's hard to bet against the Zags right now.
Andy, let me ask you about that, because I know that TGF conversation has been a big buzz around the nation right now. Was there much talk or conversation around that today at WCC Media Days?
Yeah, there was quite a bit. A lot of the coaches certainly weren't really talking about it outside of Gonzaga. Mark Few was not there. He was actually staying in Spokane in order to be present for Tyon Grant Foster's preliminary injunction hearing, which was supposed to happen on Thursday. It did not, as the NCAA was able to effectively block it from happening by filing to have it be seen in a federal court as opposed to a state court. As we're recording right now, there's still no major update on what that actually means for Grant Foster and his timeline to potentially get to play for Gonzaga or not. But Coach Brian Michelson, the assistant coach for Gonzaga, he was there and he spoke about it and really just talked about how hard this has been mentally for Tyon, and in particular, as somebody who, the first waiver application for Grant Foster was June 6th, and it is now October 24th. And the NCAA has denied him multiple times, and they have continued to try to get him to be able to play. But now he doesn't really have any other options. And he talked about this on Instagram, and Coach Michelson talked about it as well of like, there's, the G League draft has already happened. European teams have already signed their allotted amount of American players. And so if he's not able to play for Gonzaga this year, he's kind of SOL. And it's a really unfortunate situation for him. And obviously a challenging situation for Gonzaga as well, but certainly something that so many of the updates happened within the first few hours before the media day happened. So as it was kind of going on, there wasn't a lot of, everybody was kind of waiting to figure out if we were going to get any major updates, and haven't really heard anything at this point.
And we're still waiting on multiple international players around the country. I know Illinois still waiting on Mihailo Petrovic, all sorts of guys with that. Andy, it's not just Gonzaga leaving this thing. Obviously, Oregon State and Wazoo have kind of been nomads last year and again this year, kind of joining the WCC before going along with Gonzaga and a whole bunch of teams from the Mountain West to form the reformed Pac-12. What were, with that going on, and with Seattle U coming on in right now, Grand Canyon, that whole situation, like what was kind of the buzz around the media days on Thursday?
Yeah, I think Oregon State and Washington State are two programs that were really welcomed with open arms into the WCC for this 2-year period of time, and really seemed to embrace it. I was able to talk to both Wayne Tinkle and David Riley, the head coach for Oregon State and Washington State, respectively. And I kind of asked, like, hey, now that you've gone through this for a year, what is it? Did it meet your expectations, or was it, more challenging? And both of them said, like, we had a lot of respect for this league before we played any of our games. And now coming out of it, like, yeah, we knew this was going to be a tough league, and we knew that we were going to be challenged by these teams, and we're feeling more prepared going into this year. But you can kind of get the sense they're very grateful for somebody to find them a home, frankly, because they didn't have a home after the kind of implosion of the Pac-12. So I think this was a partnership that worked out very well for all parties involved. Certainly not as big of a feeling of departure for those two schools, in part because they were only here for a couple of years and they didn't impact the league the same way that Gonzaga did. But it was, I think, a good thing for the West Coast Conference to have these two teams as a part of it. And now you get Seattle U coming in, Seattle U, a program that belongs in the WCC, that was picked 8th in the preseason coaches poll, but that I will tell you right now, I think was going to finish higher than 8th. I think they're a good basketball team with a lot of key returners. And I think they're a great, great fit in the WCC, and a very shrewd move by the commissioner, Stu Jackson, to go get Seattle U kind of in the midst of knowing that Gonzaga was probably out the door. And they had made a pitch for Grand Canyon, and in fact had Grand Canyon secured for a brief period of time before Grand Canyon ultimately pulled out of the WCC, is now, of course, a member of the Mountain West. But right. It was kind of a rocky, goofy situation for the WCC, but I think they're pretty happy with the group that they got right now, even after this year when they dropped down to 9.
And UC San Diego joining 2 seasons from now for the 27-28 season. Andy, and it's kind of funny with Oregon State and Washington State. You think, man, these Pac-12 schools are coming in, and maybe they're not above Gonzaga, but they should be right there dominating the top. They're picked 5th and 6th, respectively, in the preseason WCC poll. So that is kind of interesting Anything else big picture you picked up today or learned today? Was there much conversation surrounding all this stuff with who the NCAA is clearing right now?
Yeah, there was again, not a lot of specifics about Ty and Grant Foster, but one question I asked all the coaching staffs throughout this was about G League players, because as many of you probably know, Thierry Darlon signed at Santa Clara. He came from the G League, and now we've seen it at Louisville. We've seen a couple other G League players are starting to show up on the radar for college basketball programs. But the first player from the G League to sign with a college program was Thierry Darlon at Santa Clara. Herb Sendek in Santa Clara was my final interview of the day. So I spoke to every single coach in the conference and asked them their opinion about G League players signing in the conference. And most of them were not outright like angered or anything like that. But you got the sense that there was a lot of like surprise or maybe a little frustration or just confusion about the whole situation. Obviously, Coach Sendek was a bit more happy about the situation because he is benefiting quite directly from it. But yeah, it was interesting to kind of hear the various opinions. Some coaches were like, hey, I just follow the rules, and if you're allowed to get them, great. And some coaches were like, where do we draw the line? I think multiple coaches made the same reference of like, what happens when a guy, doesn't like his role in the NBA after a year and he's still 20 years old? Could he come back? And like, I think they were saying it a little tongue in cheek of like, oh, we're just going to sign NBA guys. But like, that is a fear that real coaches are having in this situation right now. And fear is maybe not the right word, but a concern or conversation that is truly happening. And so it'll be interesting to see how much that changes over the next. I mean, we've already seen like 3 or 4 G League players cropping up on the radar of college teams in the last 24 hours or so as we're recording this. So definitely something that's going to continue to be a big storyline in college basketball. And it was good to be kind of on the ground talking to coaches in a conference where it was something that directly impacts all of them with Darlon joining Santa Clara.
Yeah, man, it's almost perfect timing that you were there and getting to do that. And it's funny you say, Andy, that one of the coaches said, hey, we just follow the rules. I think that's part of the issue. No one knows what those rules are and how can I abide by those if that line is always shifting and it's a moving target. So, Andy, no coaching changes in this thing. You have listed out 3 hot seat coaches: Shante Leggins at Portland, Stan Johnson at LMU, and then outgoing Wayne Tinkle at Oregon State outgoing, not yet Wayne Tinkle. Andy, any follow-up on any of those guys you want to say?
LMU's got a really good roster. I think they have a top 5 roster in the WCC. I don't project them to finish top 5, and I think that's the line for Stan Johnson. He's a good coach. He's a fun person to talk to, but they have higher expectations at LMU than what he has been able to deliver. And I think that this is the year where the rubber meets the road, where if he is not able to get this team into a top 5 spot in the WCC, I think he's out the door.
All right. Well, might Darlon, even though he's coming from G League, be on the first team All-WCC? We'll find out, because Andy and I are going to give you our thoughts and preseason awards predictions all coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Mazda, this episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep the game moving forward. And for the WCC, what's kind of moving things forward is unfortunately moving things forward past the WCC, and that's Oregon State and Washington State. And man, this Gonzaga crew that has defined this conference for 2+ decades now. And what's cool is they have moved their own game forward and now get to kind of level up to the Pac-12 next year. That is what moving the game forward looks like. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Andy, it's time for preseason award predictions along with our All-WCC first team for those who are newbies to our conference previews. One of our rules is that we are not allowed to pick on our own team at least multiple players from the same team, spread the love around a little bit. So that means there will only be one Gonzaga player, one St. Mary's player, one San Francisco player, for example, from each of our teams. So if there are, if you don't hear Henry Wessel's name or something like that, don't be shocked, because there's somebody else from St. Mary's that we're picking. Andy, who is your quintet, good sir?
I would like to point out that the WCC released their 10 team first team, and there are only 4 teams represented on for 10 players. So for us, picking 5 different teams means that we're having to pick players who didn't even make the first team out of 10 because they had 3 St. Mary's players, 2 Gonzaga players, 2 San Francisco players, I think 2 Santa Clara players, and then 1 Pacific player was the top 10 for the WCC. So
and
this
I
is
think
a
we
town.
got 5 teams represented.
You're right. Yeah, so we're good. We're fine, right?
Yeah. Way to go. Way to go, West Coast Conference. You killed it.
Killing it. It made it a little easier though, of like, well, we can only pick 1 Gonzaga player, so we're picking Graham Ike. Like, there's no real mystery there. It's Graham Ike. He's the pick. He's been tremendous the last 2 years at Gonzaga. Similar, almost exactly the same numbers in each of those 2 years, and there's no real reason to think he's not going to put up pretty much the same numbers, if not better numbers, here in year 3. Similarly, I think that the first teamer from last year from St. Mary's, Paulius Murauskas, is a pretty obvious choice from the Gales this year. A rebounding machine, transfer from Arizona, really, really good front court player for the Gales. And then also similarly, Tyrone Riley IV at San Francisco. There's some other great players you could pick from the Dons. I think point guard Robbie Beasley is going to be outstanding this year, but Tyrone Riley looks like an NBA player. I mean, he's a guy who hit the transfer portal and ended up returning to San Francisco, but had attention from Kentucky, had attention from Florida, have attention from some really high-profile programs because he's a long, rangy, super athletic wing, good three-point shooter, does a little bit of everything. He's a very, very, very talented player. After that, got a little bit tougher to kind of narrow it down. I went with Elijah Mahi at Santa Clara. I think there's a couple players you could pick at Santa Clara, but Mahi was this team's, I believe, leading scorer last year. Very, very gifted scorer. Doesn't do a ton else super well, but is going to light it up on the scoreboard. And certainly for a Santa Clara team expected to finish in the top 5, that should get him there. And then again, tons of other options. Elias Ralph was the player from Pacific who was named on the 10 team or the 10 player All-WCC team, but I don't think Pacific's going to finish high enough in the standings to have a first teamer. So I'm going to go with Des White, transferred joining Oregon State, Wayne Tinkle's team. White averaged 14 points per game last year at Missouri State. We've seen players transfer to Oregon State and immediately have success, similar to DeMarco Minor last year, who came from a small school and came in and immediately was great. So I think Des White, having spoken to him today as well, I think he's going to be pretty darn good for this Oregon State team. So give me him to round out my top 5.
All right, Andy. I love it. I love it. I love it. I went with that same first 3 you had with Ike, Murauskas, and Riley. So let's not prolong that or belabor the point. At Santa Clara, I really struggled between, I love a good Mahi, Andy. I mean, that's like a go-to for me. But I did go with Thierry Darlon for Santa Clara, coming in. I think he's going to be great. And so I went that way. And it's funny, I also went with my 5th choice with an Oregon State player, but I'm going to take a little flyer on Keziah Akisi, who was coming in from the JUCO ranks where he was at wherever it was. I can't even remember which ranking I saw, but he was 6th in the nation from all JUCO last year coming over, and curious to see what he can do for Coach Tinkle as he comes in. So that's going to be my my quintet, Andy. Your first 3, as well as a Santa Clara and Oregon State player as well, but different ones than you chose.
Yeah, I'll shout out that Oregon State, the players, Josiah Lake was there, as well as Des White, who I mentioned earlier. They both mentioned Akisi by name when talking about the team. So I think he's going to be a big part of that team. I think that's a good pick.
You know what, Andy? I appreciate you saying so. And I wasn't even there, and I just knew it. I felt the vibes coming through you. That's good stuff. Andy, let's go to our individual awards. Let's start with Player of the Year. I mean, Andy, is there any reason to consider anyone else other than Graham Ike?
The only reason there would be is because Graham Ike probably deserved it each the last 2 years, but because St. Mary's won the regular season, Augustus Marcelonis, who was also deserving, but Goose won it both years. Graham Ike did not. If St. Mary's wins it again, I could see them snubbing Graham Ike again, but no, he should be the overwhelming favorite. It's hard to imagine picking anybody else at this point. Graham is I mean, he's on track to average something like 20 and 9 this year for Gonzaga. Great. The number of players who've averaged 20 points in the Gonzaga uniform it's basically Adam Morrison, Dan Dickau, Drew Timme. I think that's it. And Kyle Wiltshire. I think that's it right there. So if Graham Ike gets anywhere close to 20 a game, I think he's a shoe-in.
Okay. Then let's move. And I'm with you. Ike is my choice transfer of the year. Andy, you had at least one on your first team. So I think by definition, right?
Yeah, hard to go with anybody other than Des White. I think there's some other really good transfers in this conference. I'll shout out Guillermo Diaz-Graham for San Francisco, one of the,
Yes.
of course, Diaz-Graham brothers. The other one, Jorge Diaz-Graham, by the way, transferred to Oregon State. So they're going to be competing against each other in conference play, which is very fun. But yeah, I'm Des White is my pick here.
I love that. I didn't have Des White on my first team. I did have Akisi. So again, by definition, if he counts transferring from JUCO, I'm going to go with that. If not, I'm going to go with Adam Miller, who's coming in to Gonzaga, has been, 10 to 12 kind of points in his 3 different stops at power conference schools at Illinois, LSU, Arizona State, and now comes over and it's one of those we often mid-major conferences are like, who are dudes that were like pretty good at the high major level that might end up blowing up? And I think there's a chance of that with Adam Miller. So I'm going to go with him as my transfer of the year if Akisi doesn't count. Andy, freshman of the year, who you going with?
Yeah, I wrote down Mario Saint-Superi, who's the Spanish guard for Gonzaga, who's going to play a big role off the bench. Played for Spain in the Eurobasket this summer, and I'm still sticking with that pick. I picked him in part because I didn't really know where we would count Thierry Darlon because he's not a freshman, but he's also not a transfer. But I also need to shout out Jayon Pitt to the point where I might even change my pick here. Jayon Pitt was a high regarded freshman joining Pacific. Pacific had the highest ranked freshman class in program history this year. The players and the coaches raved about him. And again, opportunity is what matters. Saint-Superi is not going to start for Gonzaga. If Pitt is able to start and play big minutes right away for this Pacific team, I think he could put up numbers that are overwhelmingly better than any other freshman in this class, which could get him this award, even if Pacific doesn't finish higher than 8th or 9th in the conference.
Mine was based less on opportunity and more on just this dude is like the highest rated dude coming into this conference by far. And that's Davis Fogel coming to Gonzaga. Gonzaga has obviously had multiple very high level players come in, obviously Chet, Jalen, for example, but Davis Fogel, the top 30-ish, 35 ranked player in the class. And again, similar to Saint-Superi, going to be coming off the bench, and we'll see what his role is, but is quite far and away the highest ranked player in the class coming to the conference. Andy, coach of the year. Can Mark Few get this as like a going away present, or what are we looking at here?
I kind of think no. Maybe I'm a little jaded because they kind of don't give Mark Few this award nearly as much as he probably deserves to get this award. I think Gonzaga would need to win the league by like a couple of games, which, to be fair, is very possible, borderline likely that ends up happening. If they win it by 2 or more games, yes, it's Few. Otherwise, I think it's going to be Randy Bennett. I don't see how they give it to somebody finishing 3rd or lower in this conference, and I don't think anybody's going to beat Gonzaga or St. Mary's at the top. So if it's not Few, it's Bennett. So I'm going to lean Randy Bennett, but I think you're picking out of a top 2 there.
Andy, can I give you a trivia? You ready?
Yes.
Every year since 2015-16, it has been Randy Bennett or Mark Few, except the COVID season. It was a different head coach in the WCC.
I know who it is because it has to be Todd Golden, right? It had to be Todd Golden.
It was not. Todd Golden never won this award.
I'm sorry. In the 2020-21 season, the year that Gonzaga didn't lose a single game.
Sorry, the season that was interrupted by COVID. So 1920.
It still should have been one of those 2 guys. Who was it?
It was Damon Stoudemire.
That's right. That's right. Shout out Pacific. Shout out Georgia Tech. Damon Stoudemire. What a guy.
Right. Yeah. So he won it. Randy Bennett. I didn't realize this till I had looked up that trivia earlier today, that Randy Bennett has won it the last 4 years in a row, Andy.
That does make me feel like maybe he's a little less likely to win it this year.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to go with Chris Gerlofson at San Francisco. But I legitimately, it's been 5 years since Mark Few won it. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like, hey, here's a Rolex and a Coach of the Year award. Don't let the door hit you on the way out kind of situation. But I'm going to go. My official guess is Gerlofson.
I like it. I like Chris Gerlofson a lot. He's a great coach. I wouldn't be surprised to see him take that home. But Isaac, we got to answer the big question to close out the show. Will the Gonzaga Bulldogs win the WCC one more time before they jump to the new look Pac-12? We're going to talk about that and how many teams from this conference might go dancing in the 2026 NCAA tournament. All that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, it's almost the weekend, so it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more each time you order, this player delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. It was for Duke. The Blue Devils' Cameron Boozer delivered in a major way. This superstar freshman hung 33 points in his first exhibition game against Central Florida. When the spotlight was on him, Boozer came through, no hesitation and no delay. And if you've been watching, this is what Cameron Boozer does. He is a pure winner, and he's going to be a winner for Duke all season long. Just like Boozer delivered for the Blue Devils, DoorDash delivers on your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Promo period through November 18th. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, the college basketball season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and you'll get $300 in bonus bets if it hits. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets that you can use all across the app. And when you use FanDuel, whether it's parlays or player props or even jumping in on the action live, it makes watching your favorite sports even more exciting, since you got a little bit riding in on the action. So whether you're a casual fan, whether you're somebody who loves deep diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. We don't have any conference odds for the WCC at FanDuel, but we do have national championship odds for Gonzaga, which remain at plus 3,500, even with the Tyon Grant Foster fiasco. We also have odds for St. Mary's at plus 20,000 if you like a real big dark horse in the Gales. So what are you waiting for, folks? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app and get started today. All right, Isaac, closing out the show, closing out our WCC preview episode here, looking at this conference as we always do, looking at the tiers. I broke them out into 5 separate tiers. I'm going to read them out to you, and you're going to tell me what you like, what you don't like about this tier list. Tier number 1, pretty easy, Gonzaga and St. Mary's. There was a little debate of should I break them up, but St. Mary's has won the league the last 2 years. It didn't feel right to have Gonzaga not in tier 1, so I figured they should go together. I'm favoring Gonzaga this year, but those two teams are very clearly the top 2 teams in this league. Tier number 2 for me was San Francisco and Santa Clara, 2 teams that have pretty consistently been in that borderline kind of on the bubble conversation. Like they're not usually straight up on the bubble, but they're usually kind of right on the periphery of that. And both of them are kind of projected to be in that spot once again this year. Tier number 3 was a little bit bigger. I have both of the big state schools in Oregon State and Washington State in this tier, but I also have Seattle U, a team that I think is going to finish higher than 8th as they were projected in the preseason poll. I think I have them projected to finish 5th in this conference. And so I have them right in this conversation as well, along with LMU. So you got Oregon State, Washington State, Seattle U, and LMU in tier 3. Tier 4 is where you have Pacific and San Diego, 2 teams that are kind of normally towards the very bottom of the conference standings, but San Diego had a really good offseason, brought in a bunch of transfers. I think they're going to be much improved this year under Coach Lavin, and Pacific had a really nice offseason as well. So give me those 2 teams in tier 4, and then tier 5 is where you get the bottom teams, Pepperdine and then Portland, 2 teams that have been consistently down at the bottom and who just lost a lot more talent than it looks like they brought in this offseason.
Andy, what's interesting, any of my pushback is not necessarily about order, but just grouping. If that makes sense? Yeah. So I all due respect to what St. Mary's has done the last couple of years, I do think it's back to a bit of a separation this year. So I would actually have Gonzaga in a tier by themselves, and then put St. Mary's and San Francisco together in tier 2. And then I would actually lump Santa Clara with Oregon State and Seattle. Yeah. And then put LMU, Washington State, and San Diego together. And then the 3 Ps together in the bottom tier, which just was appropriate from a alliterative standpoint and with how I think those teams will play out this year. So all said and done, Gonzaga tier 1, St. Mary's, San Fran tier 2, Santa Clara, Oregon State, Seattle tier 3, LMU, Wazoo, San Diego tier 4, and then the 3 Ps in tier 5. So bickering, I would just break it up a little bit different is all.
Let's talk who we think is going to win this conference, because it's really going to come down to It's going to come down to 2 teams. It always comes down to 2 teams. Gonzaga has not won the conference regular season each of the last 2 years, as that did go to St. Mary's. But like we said, the Gales lost 4 starters from last year's team. While Gonzaga did 2, they do keep Braden Huff, who was not a starter last year, but played like a starter and is going to be a starter for the team this year. Yeah, you already said it, but it feels like you got a lean here in terms of who you think is going to win the conference this year.
Yes. And now, just to make people upset, I'm going to pronounce it improperly. Gonzaga.
Oh, they hate it. They hate it when you say that, and I don't blame them.
And no, nor should they. The Zags, man, they're taking it home in their last one. I think there's like this urgency, and there's this like, dude, we can't lose this thing on the way out the door. We've dominated this bad boy since Jesus roamed the earth, and now we haven't won it the last couple years, the regular season at least, and we got to get it on the way out the door. Andy, I would imagine you feel the same. I'm going with that with the conference tournament. Part of it is because of the way the WCC tournament goes, that really heavily favors those top couple seeds, where I would expect it's Gonzaga against either San Fran or St. Mary's, with the Zags winning it all. Andy, I think it's a similar question to what I asked you earlier about Graham Ike. In a world where Gonzaga doesn't win one or both of these, why didn't they?
Yeah, I think backcourt play is a bit of a concern for this team in terms of like continuity. The Gonzaga's only returning 4 players who were played rotation minutes for Gonzaga last year. Only 4. 2 of them are Graham Ike and Braden Huff, who've talked about extensively. One of them is Osmaila Diani, who played 66 total minutes last year because he had a knee injury in the middle of the season. And then one of them is Emmanuel Inocente, who averaged less than 2 points. Those are the only 4 players who are returning who were in the rotation last year. Now, Steele Venters has spent the last 2 years at Gonzaga just medically redshirting.
Do not hurt yourself, Steele Venters, for crying out loud.
Right. Please stay healthy. And then Jalen Worley and Braden Smith were both on the team last year as redshirts, but did not play. So it looks like Gonzaga has like a brand new roster, but a lot of these guys, like there's more continuity than maybe it looks like on paper. So I'm not as concerned about that. I think the talent and the depth is definitely there. I think it's more of like, hey, it's really hard to replace Ryan Nembhard. And Braden Smith's going to have his hands full with the task of trying to do that. But I think if they were to not win, it would be because the guard play does not stand up to par and does not gel as quickly as maybe they're used to that happening in Spokane. But I think that the more likely scenario here is that Gonzaga sweeps themselves a regular season and a conference tournament.
So Gonzaga, St. Mary's, San Fran, all playing to their ceiling. Gonzaga wins it.
Yeah, agreed.
Gonzaga, they both play to their ceiling. Gonzaga is 80% of theirs.
Yeah, that gets a little closer. I think St. Mary's might take it in that case, but it's a lot closer.
Okay, good. I just wanted to get to where that line was. You know what I mean? That's always interesting to look at that. Evan Mia, by the way, had a great little article on Thursday of like teams variance with a bunch of models he ran. And so that's just been, that kind of thing has been spinning on my mind all day. And so that's why I wanted. Okay, Andy, ultimately, I just mentioned those 3 teams, barring some sort of tournament wildness or a team popping that we don't expect. I think those are the 3 teams probably in consideration for making the NCAA tournament out of this conference. Is there anyone else you would consider, and how many of those 3 get in?
Yeah, there's not, and it's 2. Unfortunately, we're not in an era anymore where a league like this can get 3 teams in. I mean, I think the A10, we talked about that when we did that conference preview as well. The A10 used to get 3, 4, 5 teams regularly, and now they're struggling to get 2. St. Mary's and Gonzaga have been the 2 teams that have made it regularly from the WCC, but outside of them, San Francisco made it once when Todd Golden was the head coach, and that's it. Like that's been it. So I think the odds of that changing, even as San Francisco has improved, even as Santa Clara has improved, the kind of current college basketball space doesn't really allow for a lot of room for this conference or any conferences similar to this to get more than 2 teams in. So I think it'll be Gonzaga. I think St. Mary's has a good enough schedule that they'll get in, and I think that's going to be it.
Yeah, Andy, I agree with you. I also appreciate the succinct answer you gave me there. And you said no, and it's 2.
Yep.
I love it. That's perfect. Well done, sir. All right. West Coast Conference, in a lot of ways, it's the last ride for this thing. Similar to what we said about the Mountain West a couple shows ago, Andy, with that conference preview. And so, man, curious to see how it all plays out as it wraps up. Guys, as we said, it is a massive weekend of exhibition games. So make sure you're locked in on those, because Andy and I are going to break down a lot of what we saw on Monday's show. Next Friday is our last conference preview. We're going to be doing the Big 12. We'll have a couple other team previews this week. I know we're doing NC State, and nothing else is coming to my brain of where we're hitting. So should be a fun last week in the lead up to the regular season. Cannot wait at all. It's going to be great. If you have not subscribed to the show on video and audio, do that right now. If you've not joined our Discord, where we're talking stuff all the time, I just put a poll in there actually about which of these exhibition games are you most looking forward to this weekend. You can go vote in that, and that'll be great. As always, apologies to the Lawyer family. Cheers to the Wild Pope. Shouts to the Mick Bruins. We're going to every coast. And until next week, when we break down these exhibition games. Peace.